Connected. Was that everybody, Tim? Did you let everybody in? Okay, great. Looks like we got enough. Okay, sounds good. So good morning, everybody. Good to see you all virtually. I'm Stacy McCarter. I serve as the Mitigation Program Manager for the Oregon Department of Forestry. We're here today for the February Smoke Management Advisory Committee meeting. I'm going to go ahead and share the agenda here. Just a second. All right, can you all see the agenda? I'm not hearing anybody, so I'm assuming you can see it.
Yes. Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, great. We have a fully virtual half-day meeting today with mainly informational items. We'll start with welcome and roll call, go into the committee and agenda reports. We have some time for public comment. Then we'll take about a 10-minute break. I will try to stick to that 9:35, 9:45 time for public comment. And then after the break, we'll go into the fall burning overview. Next up, national and regional prescribed fire priorities with Tim and Rick. And then the rulemaking process with Ryan Miller. And then any go backs and talking about the next meeting. So it should be a pretty short and sweet meeting. So are there any committee members that have anything they'd like to add to the agenda?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay. All right. Perfect. So we'll start off with a few logistical items since this is fully virtual. Glad to have you all joining. But if you're not a committee member or presenting, please mute yourself and have your camera turned off. We have the 10-minute time frame for public comments. And like I said, I'll try to stick to that time frame. Once we open that up, I'd ask for any public to use the Zoom function of raising your hand, and I'll call on you one by one. You can unmute and turn your camera on at that time. Let's see. I'd ask you guys to have the committee members to have your cameras turned on if possible and mute while you're not talking. Today, we're without our chair, Gregory McLaren. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Vice Chair Rick Graw for the welcome and roll call.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's good to see you virtually online. And I'm trying to do my best to serve as chair, acting chair, in the absence of Gregory. And I did have one thing I thought might be helpful for our committee members and the members of the public to understand, Stacy. So my understanding is that we're going to have a renewal or a next. I think a lot of our committee members' terms are up here at the end of March, or is it the end of April? I forget which.
Yeah, it's in April.
Okay, so at that time, ODF will be making new selections, and some of us might have been contacted if we want to serve again. But I imagine there's going to be at least one new committee member. And so, Stacy, would you mind just kind of elaborating on how a new committee member is selected, so everybody's clear on that process?
Tim, do you want to grab that one? I see you smiling.
Yeah, I was going to hit on that in some of the opening in the agency report out. So there's in statute, there's 4 specific members out of the 5-member committee that are identified. And then there's a member of the public at large. For the member of the public, there'll be a solicitation process coming out from the department to seek folks interested. So if anyone on the call here is interested in applying for that process will be will be put out through the media channels through the department to solicit interest in folks to serve in that position, and then those applications and interest forms will be evaluated and then presented to the state forester for a recommendation. And so that's the plan for that. Open and trying to gather as much interest from folks and from across the state as we can in that process to fill that seat.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions right now regarding that process, the selection of committee members, the appointment of committee members at this time? Okay, I'll give it 10 seconds, which is typically, I think, the rule of thumb when you're on at a meeting asking a question if you have silence. So I'll go 1, 2, 3. Okay, hearing no questions, let's go and do roll call right now. And so let's begin with Scott Hansen, since you're on screen.
Okay, I'm the non-industrial forest land owner member. I'm a member of OSWA, Oregon Small Woodland Association. I'm a past president of that that group. So the small landowners are who I'm representing.
Thank you, Scott. Let's just go around for each committee member. Would we have another committee member would like to introduce themselves?
So I think Kyle is absent, and then we possibly have Dave LaChapelle from BLM.
Dave, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Dave LaChapelle, Deputy Fire Management Officer for Vail BLM, and rest of the folks from the state office weren't able to get on today, so you get me instead. So
great, thank you. Any other committee members? All right. How about we just go around the room quickly and just see who's with us today. And let's just start with some of our colleagues over at ODF. Christina, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning. I'm Christina Clemens. I'm the Smoke Management Field Coordinator. I work out of the Salem office here in ODF. And good morning.
Morning. All right. Let's see. We have, I see, how about some of our meteorologists? Sherry, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Sherry Pugh. I am a meteorologist with Smoke Management with ODF. I'm going to be presenting with Christina, who you just introduced yourself there, here after the break.
Great. Thank you so much, Sherry. Good to see you. I see Pete is on.
Hi, Pete Parsons, lead meteorologist, Smoke Management, ODF. I will be in and out of the meeting today because I'm actually on the forecast desk. That's right, Sherry's.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, is Gary with us? Gary Vatal, are you with us? No, I guess not. All right, let's, how about other people from ODF? I see Ryan Miller's name.
Yeah, good morning. Ryan Miller. I serve as the Administrative Rules Specialist for the Protection Division. So I'll be hitting on the Smoke Management Rule Review topic today.
Great, thanks, Ryan. And Shelby?
Hi, everyone. Shelby Berry, admin support for ODF.
Okay. And Nick, you are here on behalf of ODF, is that correct?
That's true. I'm Nick Yonker, retired, had a 10-month stint at ODF finishing up in December, and just listening in today.
Great. Thanks, Nick. Good to see you again. All right. Anybody else from ODF I didn't call on yet?
Hi, I'm Jamie Paul. I've been helping out in the mitigation unit for the last month, and this is my first SMAC meeting, and I'm very excited to see what you guys discussed today. And I'm just here listening in, learning everything I can.
Thanks, Jamie. Good to see you again. All right, let's move on to Oregon Health Authority.
I got
Gabrielle.
one more for you, Rick. It's,
sorry.
Boone Zimmerly. I work as the Eastern Oregon Area Protection Policy Coordinator, and similar to Jamie and Nick, listening in today.
Oh, good to see you again, Boone.
Yeah,
No,
same here, Rick.
Boone for years. He was one of my instructors early on in the S390, I think it was. Yeah, so a little bit intermediate fire behavior, I believe it was. But anyway, good to see you, Boone. All right, let's move on to OHA, Gabriella.
Hey folks, Gabriella Goldfarb. I'm the Environmental Public Health Section Manager in the Oregon Health Authority. I've had various folks staffing me on this, but one is often another priority and the other is about to have a baby. So I'll be more point on this for this meeting today. So glad to be with you all.
Yeah, thanks, Gabrielle. Good to see you. How about DEQ? Jennifer? Jennifer Horton.
Yeah, sorry about that. My button got stuck there for unmute. Yeah, Jennifer Horton with DEQ. I work physically out of Medford and am an air quality planner, and I'll be providing some updates later for PMNEX and some other items.
And just to clarify, Jennifer, can you just talk about, you're the new DEQ representative to the committee in light of the departure of
Margaret Miller. Yeah, so I'm the new air quality planner. Yep, and I will be the representative for the committee and working on things related to wildfire smoke and prescribed fire smoke.
Great, thanks, Jennifer. Anybody else from DEQ on? All right, let's move on to EPA. Randall.
Good morning, Randall Ruddick, EPA Region 10 Air Planning Section Team Lead and point of contact and lead for smoke management and smoke management plans.
Could barely hear you, Randall.
Is that any better?
Not much, but it's okay. I think we heard enough that no, Randall Ruddick from EPA. Thanks, Randall, for being here. All right. And then how about anybody else here in from an agency as a representative that I missed? If not, there's some representatives from the public at large. Susan Jane Brown, I see you're on.
I am. I'm Susan Jane Brown with Silvix Resources, just listening in today. I've got a interest in how EPA's PM 2.5 rule is landing here in Oregon. And I'd also love to hear more about the tabletop exercise that the state went through with EPA a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, great. Thanks, Susan. Good to have you aboard. Let's see, I see Jody Barham.
Good morning, Jody Barham. I'm a co-coordinator for Oregon Living with Fire, implementing the National Cohesive Strategy in Crook, Deschutes, Jefferson, and the northern part of Klamath County. Very similar interest to Susan, and I'll be around for the first half of the meeting and then probably follow up with Boone on what I miss in the second half. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, Jody. All right, how about Aaron?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Aaron Krikova with the Rogue Valley Prescribed Burn Association.
Nice to have you here, Aaron, with us today. And Ellie.
Hi, Ellie Gaines. I'm just a co-coordinator with Deschutes River Woods Firewise, and I'm just here to listen and learn. Just curious. Thank you.
All right. And then I'm going to go back to, let's see, Gary, we have you on. Gary Valtow. I see you listed, but not here. And then Kyle, are you able?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm having trouble manipulating these buttons. Yeah, I'm Gary Valtow. ODF meteorologist. I've been here for almost 4 years.
Good to have you, Gary. Thanks for joining. Okay. Kyle Williams.
Morning, everybody. Kyle Williams, Director of Forest Protection, OFIC.
Great. And anybody that didn't get a chance to introduce themselves yet? Okay, with that, roll call is complete then, and I'll move on to the committee and agency reports. I believe the first one is from the committee members. Do any committee members have anything they'd like to report out on? And Kyle, since you're on the screen, we could start with you.
Sure. Nothing to report. And I don't see it specifically on the agenda, so I was just going to make mention of the and I presume that others are already tracking this, but wondering if others have a plan for comments on the PM 2.5 exemption rulemaking that's going on right now. Probably so, but apparently there's a comment period open right now that got extended to March, and I would assume that's something that this group may want to weigh in on. So at least in this world, that is one thing I'm tracking. And then the other one is House Bill 4016, and maybe Tim will talk about this later, so I don't want to jump in front of him, but it does appear that there will be some cleanup on that prescribed fire liability bill that got passed in the long session, and so maybe make it a little more functional. And that appears to be on the train out of town. Maybe Tim knows more. There was also some funding for some DEQ stuff, and I'm sure Gabriella is tracking that pretty well too. So that's what I know from my world.
All right, thanks. And Randall, will you be giving us a little update on the new PM 2.5 rule?
Is my speaker any better now?
Yes, much better.
Yeah. I can just ping me when you want me to say something. There's not quite as much as I think people were expecting, but I can give what I can.
Okay. Best I could tell, it probably fits into this period of time with other report outs. Let's go around to the committee members and we'll come back to you. How's that, Randall?
That works. Thank you.
All right. Let's go around to other committee members. Let's see, Dave, do you have anything that you want to touch base on? BLM?
I'm not sure. Do you want kind of a rough estimate of how many acres we've done this year or anything like that? Or is that what you're looking for?
It's really up to your discretion. If we're here to talk about smoke.
Yep.
And so certainly, acres burned, that's helpful in terms of, but it's also helpful to know where that's going to happen, as well as the timeframes that we're looking for, and any issues or concerns you have in terms of how the rules might be affecting your ability to do your work, as well as any concerns out from the public in terms of the smoke out in that area as well. So it's all open for discussion, whatever you want to present there.
Once you come back to me, I'm working actually on the breakdown per district of what each district burnt right now. And then once you come back to me at the end of the committee members, and I'll have a better idea. How's that?
Okay. Thank you. And I'll be reporting out a little bit later on. I want to make sure, I heard there was an interest in hearing about the West Bend pilot study. Tim, where is that going to be on the agenda? Are we going to address that, or is this the portion where we'll be talking about that a little bit?
I think we got that with the regional. We can work that into the regional priorities.
Okay. All right. Thanks. And let's see, my report out is also will be later on. Is that right, Stacy and Tim? Is that where you put you asked me for some documentation and some maps and asking me where we expect burning to occur? And I sent you some materials.
Yes, that's at that time frame this afternoon, the regional.
Oh. Okay. So we'll be touching base. So I don't have anything from the Forest Service. Let's see, are there any other committee members that have anything else?
This is Scott Hansen here, Rick. Just for anyone who's new today on our meeting, majority of these small owners that I represent, small forest land owners, are in. It's great. They're in the ODF Forest Protection District. We do have about 24% who are not in. They're under another set of rules, and some of them, I believe, are prevented from burning because they're quote close to large cities. There's if you look at the rules, there's a 6-mile limit going out from larger cities, and we actually do have some members in that area. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, that. So has there been a change in the rules then? For years we've been hearing about some of the struggles of small landowners.
We have been talking to ODF. It was news to me that Margaret had taken a new job. We had worked with Margaret, and I think a little bit with Jennifer too, maybe sat on our meetings. And but I don't have too much to report now. And one of my questions was, we do a 5-year review, right, on the Oregon Smoke Management Plan. And one of my questions was, does ODF review some of their rules that maybe have been enforced for 20 years? And I think they do make some small changes, but anyway, that was just a question I had to them, and it hasn't. I think they heard it, and that's kind of where we're at right now.
Tim or Stacy, do you want to respond to Scott's question?
Yeah, I think we're touching on some of the rulemaking process towards the end here. Previously, we talked about having to punt it a little bit with trying to evaluate the new rules, and then COVID hit and really messed with our data gathering abilities. But as far as the out of district stuff, I may punt that to either Michael or Jennifer. That's outside of the district or the ODF protection boundaries is their realm, and I believe they're trying to work through some of those rulemaking pathways as well. It's kind of a challenging issue, as we all know, burning near communities.
Yes, indeed. All right. Sounds like we'll hear a little bit more, huh? All right. Well, let's move on to a DEQ report out. Jennifer.
Yeah, so it sounds like we're going to hear a little bit more about the PMNAX updates from Randall, so I won't get too much into that, but I will say that the air quality planning team is working on a timeline and a one-pager just to discuss the impacts of that NAX change to Oregon and our implementation timeline. So once we have that, can make sure that's out to the SMAC for review. Some other programs that we're working on still, the biomass utilization working group is moving forward. We have the biomass utilization permitting guide, which is nearing completion. We should have that done in the next 2 months, I would say, and are working on determining how that is going to be posted and made available to the public. And let's see, West Bend, it sounds like we're also going to hear from in the regional updates, so I won't get too much into that one. And just, working through the short session and tracking some of the legislation that is there to see how that is going to impact our operations.
Jennifer, you mentioned this biomass working group's coming out with a permitting guide, and I recognize that right as you're doing that, EPA is looking at changing some federal rulemaking as opposed to that. Could we get an update from you or Randall on how that change is looking and how that might affect permitting in the state?
Yeah, so I'll talk about it from a state perspective, and then I'll let Randall give any updates on how that process is going for changing the Title V requirements for air curtain incinerators. Assuming that change does go through, we already have some permit writers who are working on making changes to the ACI Title V permit. So regardless of what happens with EPA, we are working on simplifying that permitting process. And then, of course, in light of any changes that do come through on the Title V requirements, our final permit will kind of depend on the outcome of that. And then from the permitting guide standpoint, it will be pretty easy for us to go through and just update those sections that apply to the ACI Title V permit and to repost that document once changes are made.
Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, it'd be interesting to track the trends. You know, I don't know how many permits are issued right now for ACIs in Oregon, but I sense it's less than a handful.
I think we have about 8 active permits right now.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So you're seeing an increase since this general permit came out, that more, you get more permits being issued, and hopefully we'll see more of that in the future. So it seems like a good alternative to just open burning where it's economical. Great, thank you. All right, how about ODF? Do you have a report out?
So I got the start of the report out today, and I'm gonna turn over to Stacy to catch anything that I miss. So since we last chatted in June, ODF's had we'll call it significant executive changes over at the agency here. So we've our state forester Cal Mukamoto has appointed Wendy Heckman as our deputy director of administration. It's taking care of a lot of the nuts and bolts of the programs, minus budget management and minus HR. So a lot of the rest of the functions of the program there. Wendy's new to the agency, but also hopped right in that role and hit the ground running. Along with that, Cal also made a change, or appointed Mike Shaw as the deputy state forester. So Mike was previously the division chief the last time the committee met, and then so he took that appointment effective December 1. And also the state forester created a new position, a deputy state forester of fire operations, which will be a new position in the agency to cover essentially the protection division and then some of our administrative areas within the state, and provide some of that line supervision. So that'd be a new position that'll provide a little more opportunity for some face time with another person at that executive level to speak prescribed burning, to talk about fire operations and fuels management, and to provide some relief, and also balance the forestry and fire response functions that the department is responsible for. As far as in the division, staff's been fairly stable with that. So we've been hitting the ground running and getting more cohesion with the investment, or with the additional positions with Senate Bill 762 from the 2021 biennium. And everyone's starting to meld and really moving the machine forward as getting more efficient and getting work done a little bit quicker and hitting the capacity we needed. As Kyle mentioned, we're in the middle of our short session right now. Lots of craziness in a 5-week session, but there's 2 bills of note. One is House Bill 4133, which restructures the ODF's fire protection budgeting. We'll call it the biennial, and how we fund fire protection at the base level, as well as large fire impacts for that. So that's a significant financial change to the agency potentially, and that's in a subcommittee of Ways and Means right now, and will be probably moved out of there by the end of the morning, and then head over to full Ways and Means. So that's that one, pretty significant bill there. Also, 4016 is a continuation of the legislature's investments into the wildfire programs that were initiated in 2021. And with that, there's a prescribed fire liability fund that was passed last spring in our long session, and it had a couple tweaks towards the end that caused some challenges. So we have a fix-it bill to implement right now, and that'll hit assuming that 4016 goes through the system, then we'll be able to implement that liability fund that the legislature created. And that fund in particular is for folks who for either certified burn managers or burn supervised by a conducted by a rangeland association, or tribal partners, or the state forest or forest protective associations. If they followed everything that they were supposed to do and they still had an escape and there was no finding of negligence that resulted in it, there's a relief fund available, and that'll cover any claims for property damage and also suppression action taken. So it's a new concept. Well, it's not a new concept. It's been it was established in California. The one in Oregon has a few slight variations with it that will allow us some flexibility. So with that, yeah, we'll get into there's the national and regional letters cooperation or letters of cooperation. We'll be hitting those later as we go in West Bend, but that's a rapidly developing area of interest among public health and land management agencies. So that's been ongoing, and ODF's been highly involved in that as well. We'll get more into that. So Stacy, I will turn over to you now.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tim. So I'll start my update with sharing the need for additional capacity for our forecast shop. We are currently staffed with only 3 full-time meteorologists, which leaves us stretched really thin to have enough staff and capacity to get all the daily statewide forecasts out, assist multiple callers each day with individual burn decision making, watch the nephelometers statewide, do all the investigating and reporting on incidents and intrusions, which can take hours and days of our staff time during these events. We found that the increase in burning, even through the dead of winter, leaves us with little to no time to do the crucial research and development to keep our program sustained. So last year, we found a short-term solution by bringing Nick Yonker in. So just a big thank you to Nick for spending his 10 months with us in a temporary position. He was able to get some really critical work done. Some of the things he did, he retooled the original smoke model that he created long time ago. And the updates he made actually allowed for a 3 to 4 day forecast to be sent out. So this change alleviated the need for a forecaster to work over the weekend. So that helped free up some of the capacity. So now the forecast can be sent out on Friday, and it's good through the first working day of the next week. So this is definitely a paradigm shift that the field has been wanting for some time. So that's really great news. Nick also spent time one-on-one with the forecasters to train and mentor them on the technical aspects of the model and to help them feel more confident with putting out the forecasts and decision-making on individual burns. As we move forward, we will need an additional forecaster to add complete crucial work on model development and maintenance, computer programming, code writing, program development, finding efficiencies, streamlining processes, and maintaining enough staff to allow for cross-training and for them to be able to take leave and ensuring that the day-to-day operations keep going. So we'll be working on trying to get an extra person in the shop over the next year or so. Another project we've been working on over the past year was we got 50 plus federal employees assigned logins and passwords to enter their burn information into the ODF smoke database after the federal fast tracks program was eliminated. Our staff put together virtual trainings to help those employees, and we continue to give technical guidance to them to ensure the compliance and understanding of the rules when they register, plan, and accomplish their burns. And then lastly, I'll just say I'm really excited to report out on the Certified Burn Manager program. We've had over 25 applicants so far, with 20 currently certified. The instructional guide has been completed and course content is currently being created and will be delivered by Mike Beasley at LCC and is in development at OSU. OSU expects to have content completed and ready to be delivered later this spring. The brochure, burn plan templates, and applications for the CBM and CBM training provider are available on our website. And that's the end of my report, unless anyone has any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Tim. It's very helpful to hear that. And I think at this time, I'd like to hear from Randall Ruddock, if you could give us an update on the new EPA National Ambient Air Quality Standard for PM 2.5. And if there's time, maybe you could just touch base on what you might know about the proposed federal rulemaking associated with federal operating permits for air curtain incinerators. Thanks, Ronald.
All right. Excuse me. So as many of you probably know, we did lower the annual PM 2.5 NACs down to 9 micrograms per cubic meter. It was 12. And we retained the 35 micrograms per cubic meter for the 24-hour NAC. So the only change is for the annual. That happened again this month. So there's a 1-year timeline for the states to provide initial recommendations for designations, which is to say, provide information to EPA saying whether or not they think any of their areas are non-attainment or are in attainment or do not have enough data to decide. So that is supposed to be into us by February of next year. And in February 2026, we are supposed to finalize generally in alignment with those recommendations, but finalize designations throughout the nation for that. So reevaluate all the areas data. It looks like they're going to use the 2021, 2022, and 2023 data, which is in keeping with using the most recently certified data. There's a little bit of time we've got to get all that certified. And in February 2027, which would be 3 years after we finalized, the states are supposed to submit an infrastructure SIP for the newly revised PM 2.5 annual NACs. And that is the grand catch-all, end-all state implementation plan explaining how they will continue to attain or will figure out how to maintain. And 3 years sounds like a long time, but if you're in state implementation planning, you know that is a very tight window to get all of the things in a row and get it submitted. And then by the fall of 2027, which is determined by being 18 months after our designation is finalized, the implementation of the PM moderate non-attainment plans is supposed to occur. So shortly after the ISIP is put in, whatever is deemed for any areas that are non-attainment designated as moderately non-attainment, they need to start implementing those rules. So you would have some rules associated with that that need to be made and then implemented in relatively short order for what we do. And then moderate areas are supposed to attain by the 6th calendar year after the effective date of designations, which would be December 2032. So implement the plan in 27, and by 2032, the idea is to get those areas that are designated non-attainment back into attainment. Oregon does have some non-attainment or an non-attainment area and real recent history with non-attainment areas. So at least that is the positive. If any of them go back into non-attainment, which I'm not the data guru, I don't do the QA, QC or the exceptional events. At least Oregon has experience with how to handle it. As far as exceptional events go, I believe that's going to be a pretty major player in the designations, especially with all the wildfires. As far as prescribed fire, this is just my opinion. I don't think it's going to impact it too terribly much. We normally plan based off the 24-hour NACs. For PM 2.5, trying to address the annual PM in your daily planning for your smoke is pretty rough. Unfortunately, it's a reactive thing. As you get near to or past the NACs themselves in a violation perspective going into non-attainment, then you have to revise and change the way you approach your smoke management. So unfortunately, there's not an easy way to maneuver around it, but the positive is I don't think it's going to impact prescribed fire near as much as a lot of other people seem to think. That being said, a good alternative to putting smoke in, which does adjust the PM NACs some, a good way to avoid putting some smoke into the air is the use of the air curtain incinerators. I was frantically searching my calendar schedule because I knew I had not had it yet, but it was upcoming. So I have a internal meeting on February 27th, so next week, to discuss what is the state of that rulemaking. It bogged down for a while. We are still pushing for getting it approved. I don't know exactly where it's at, so that's all I can say is about where it's at. It's just we're still in the process of trying to make those revisions to make air curtain incinerators for the purposes of burning biomass instead of having to do open burning with it a bit easier. I would like to put in a plug for that. There's very little that is cheaper than a drip torch or match, but the ACIs will allow burning when you would not be able to burn the traditional methods anyway. And that's my main plug for ACIs. That's pretty much it. I know I shot it out pretty fast. If you have any clarifying questions, feel free to ask.
Thanks, Randall. Does anybody have questions? Kyle?
Thanks, Randall. That's helpful. So I guess this is where I'll wander off into ground that I don't know much about. And that exceptional events piece that you mentioned was going to be a big player here. As I read it right now, there's a call for input on that exceptional events waiver and what qualifies in there out right now. It looks like they are open to exempting wildfires within the state from the data that will crunch our annual numbers. Okay, nodding it. Okay, I'm reading that right so far. And then also they would be willing to exempt prescribed fire as long as there is a SIP in place for the state that prescribes according to forecasting, et cetera, and whatnot. Is that accurate when I'm reading that? Because it's interesting across the country. Some states are like, no, this is terrible because it's going to push states into having more infrastructure. And when I read it, I was like, this is great. We've got the infrastructure. Let's get the exemption so that our RX smoke doesn't even count towards our 9 UGMs. Am I following that right?
I would say you're about 80% there. So wildfire, definitely. I mean, it's a wildfire. It's an exceptional event, although there are people questioning the term exceptional given how routine we are having to deal with wildfires. But then that brings the prescribed fire portion into play, trying to abate that or mitigate it or prevent it. It just all depends on the situation. So as far as prescribed fire, it can qualify for an exceptional event, but it's not a carte blanche exemption. You can't just say, oh, we had a prescribed fire, so and we have a smoke management plan, so exempt that data. Unfortunately, and we're working on trying to make it easier, but it's a pretty heavy lift to show cause and effect, because generally the smoke impacts aren't like 100 meters from the fire. They're a good distance away, and we do believe in doing our due diligence of not just accepting any excusing of data. Let's make sure it really was what it said it was. But there are certain criteria that are laid out in the guidance. EPA promulgated some guidance for ozone and PM max exceptional events regarding to prescribed fire specifically. So in general, if you follow the smoke management plan, like you're talking about with forecasts, and you tried not to bust the max, then providing you can demonstrate that that was the cause, it generally will be concurred upon, as we call it. So that would get you the exemption. But the biggest caution I would like to put out there is it's not as I've heard it called, a get out of jail free card. But it's not what you're saying. You've seen from others too, like, oh, this is terrible. It's gonna, just really annihilate us. No, the intent is to action the fact that EPA recognizes the need for prescribed fire. Well, let's kind of try to balance both, air quality and that to the best of our ability. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. It helps me understand a little bit. So then it occurs to me there would be an affirmative action needed probably from somebody on this call related to a prescribed fire event to ask for that exceptional event waiver. And I assume that's probably Stacy's shop.
I can't speak to exactly who, but ODEQ would be the keeper of the gate, so to speak, because they would have to submit it, even if somebody else prepared it all. And I can't speak for Oregon State exactly who they're going to have doing the work, but we would work hand in hand. Region 10 will work.
Perfect. Well, it's probably that smarter people already have this under control, but I guess, Rick, I would just put down a marker that if we don't have a plan for executing this, I think we should think about it. It'd be probably in our best interest.
Yeah, I hear you, Kyle. There's lots of questions especially for land management organizations, landowners, what is their responsibility? Should there be a need for an exceptional event demonstration? Will all that follow on DEQ, or will DEQ be asking us for some information? And it'd be great to get a heads up on that ahead of time so we could know, because we never know which burn will cause that need for exceptional event. So that's where I see a plan being helpful. And I see you shaking your head. Is that what you're thinking, Kyle?
Yeah, I believe so. And I would imagine Amanda's got a plan already. So I'll shut up now.
Okay,
And
let's go to
I mean, if I may, Rick, I'd just like to interject, and I'll be mentioning this at RX 410 next week. Document everything you can if you're on the ground burning. Wind direction, what was the smoke doing? Because as was just said, you don't know which burn you're going to need to do the exceptional events for, and it might be 3 years after the fact. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm not going to remember exactly what the wind did and where the smoke went 3 years after a burn, unless it was a really bad burn.
I guess one thing before I give you the mic back, sorry. Randall, is there a need for specific state comments now on that exceptional events waiver process? Do you see any utility in this group weighing in on that at this point, or is it in good shape?
I don't have a strong opinion. We have a more recent memorandum of understanding, letters of intent to cooperate, state, local, tribal, federal land managers, all the way. So that's a few tiers above me. So I feel quite confident that the input's being put in there. I never want to discourage anybody from commenting though. I just don't know if there's a need for it. I'm not aware of one, and I'm pretty close to on the ground here. So I think I'd know if it'd be like, yes, please comment, provide us something. But again, feel free to if that's what you want to do.
all right, let's go to SJ and then Amanda.
Yeah, thanks for taking my question. I appreciate it. It's a really helpful perspective, Randall. Thank you for sharing that. You said that you were not as concerned as some are about how EPA's rule is going to affect prescribed burning, and I'd like to just hear a little bit more about that. It's certainly something that I'm concerned about, and I know a lot of advocates and burners and tribes that I work with are also quite concerned. So I would love to hear some good news about why you are perhaps not as concerned as some of us.
So really, it all just boils down to math. You're taking a 3-year average of 3 years averages. So any specific impact is going to move that number very, very little, because you're averaging 365 measurements, so to speak, or 365 numbers, and then you're doing that 3 times, and then you're averaging those 3 averages. And we did, Peter Brewer and I did a mathematical evaluation, nothing super fancy because it doesn't need to be, in the most recent Oregon Smoke Management Plan update to show its impact or potential impact on the PM NACs. Now that, granted, was accounting for the sub NACs thresholds and both 24-hour and 1 hour, but it still holds a good example of how small you can bump it. And when I say I'm not as worried as others are, it's because I believe I understand it correctly, that either you're going to be in non-attainment or you're not. And if you're in non-attainment, that's going to be a big impact on how you go about your prescribed burning, because you're concerned about smoke, because it's definitely going to impact the non-attainment area in some fashion. If you're not non-attainment, you don't know how close you are until we calculate the numbers, and we do try to keep up on those, but there's a lot of behind the scenes QA/QC of data. So the numbers that we could easily grab generally aren't representative because they haven't accounted for exceptional events. States have to flag certain data saying we may think in the future that this is a concern. So the main reason I'm not overly concerned is I've got a background in making burn decisions and smoke calls. You can't really plan for it on the annual level. You can only say, in this area we are either over or really near, so we got to be really cautious, more than usual, or hey, we've got a good bit breathing room. I'm not concerned about the annual, and there's just not much you can do. I don't foresee in the planning, and I speak that internally as well. Having tried to figure out all the different NACs and account for them with the daily monitor readings, assimilate all that, and make a good burn decision.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Amanda?
Jennifer, you want to? Oh, I'm sorry. I can't see which order the hands came in.
Well, Amanda was first, then Jennifer, unless Jennifer was, we'll come back to you, Jennifer, okay? Let's go to Amanda.
Rick, hi everyone. I appreciate the background additional information on the EPA changes to the NACs. I'm curious with regards to the exceptional events rule. Been digging around in the 2016 version, and prior to that, as I recall, it stated that you can only use the exceptional events rule for events that are not expected to occur again. And with prescribed burning, the idea at least is that it's not a one-time thing, that you are going to go back and do it again and maybe do it again. And so I'm wondering if the rules now read differently. I tried to search them, but I just wanted to know from someone who's an expert if that is still what they say, or if it isn't, what does it say, and how are we looking at the use of this rule as applied to prescribed fire when it's something that in theory we're going to be practicing over and over again on most of the landscapes we're treating?
It's a very valid question and easy to answer. Providing you don't burn more frequently than the intended fire return interval, and notice I said intended, then it's unlikely to reoccur. We developed that in our guidance indicating that. So I won't say we negated that concern completely, but providing you're following your prescriptions, you shouldn't have a problem with that in a demonstration. We needed to burn 10 years later. We got an exceptional event for that. 10 years later, we need to burn that same piece of land. We burn it. Something went awry there. We need an exceptional events demonstration and concurrence. The natural fire return interval was 10 years or less. You have now qualified for that particular criteria point.
So in other words, you could go through that process on the same exact piece of ground more than one time. Okay, thank you.
Let's go to Jennifer, and then we have to still hear from BLM and OHA. So this will be our last question to EPA.
Not a question. I just wanted to share a little bit of context about DEQ's exceptional event process. So we do have a team that tracks wildfire data and, collects all of the relevant information to submit that demonstration to EPA. I don't know that Oregon has submitted one for prescribed fire before. But if that is something that an agency thinks is going to be an issue with one of their burns, I would just suggest reaching out to DEQ prior to conducting that burn or prior to prescribed burn season and asking what data it is that we would normally need to collect for our exceptional event demonstration. And then there's no concern about needing to go back and figuring out, what days it occurred on and what kind of data needs to be gathered during the burn. We can have all of that kind of collected ahead of time. It makes the process a lot easier for everybody.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Well, very interesting topic. I'm sure there's going to be more to come on this one, but we do need to move on in our agenda. So we were going to hear from BLM. Dave, you want to, are you ready to share with us now?
I am. Just a couple updates on kind of what the state office is doing. We're looking at different mechanisms for paying for our smoke besides the normal agreement that we're under. Kind of make it easier on everybody there. We're also working, trying to get the billing sorted out from the last 2 years, and on that. Southwest Oregon RMP, lots of smoke going into that. And then I got acres if you're ready. Roughly 14,500 acres, Oregon BLM wide. And here's the breakdown. Burns is just under 300 acres. Coos Bay District, 250. Lakeview, 1,700. Northwest Oregon, 900. Medford, 670. Prineville, just under 1,000. Same thing with Roseburg at 956, and then Vale District, we're sitting at about 930. And then looking at our spreadsheet for the next couple weeks, it looks like I'm the only one that's going to be doing any burning, and that's probably about 120 acres in Baker County, just under 70 in Union County, and then looking at probably a couple hundred more acres in Malheur County. And again, those acres are registered and ready to go. So if there's any questions, and then again, we're the smoke table top exercise, really interested in that in Central Oregon. Again, with the Prineville District, working on a lot of stuff there in the Bend metropolitan area. But yeah, any other questions, just let me know.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And is that what you're expecting for this spring, or you expect some of those acres to be into the fall?
Those are acres, first ones I gave, those are completed acres. And then again, our the acres I gave for us are here in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I think some of the other districts will start jumping in as soon as snow starts leaving. So,
All right. Well, good luck with that.
yeah.
All right, thanks. All right, let's get back to OHA. I don't think we've heard from them yet. Gabrielle?
Good morning, everybody. Again, Gabriela Goldfarb, Environmental Public Health Section Manager at the Oregon Health Authority. And, you know, our focus is always on kind of smoke resilience and health, of course. I wanted to flag in legislative session, you know, we are keeping an eye on 4016, but the one that has most direct impacts for us is Senate Bill 1530, that is providing funding for two things related to smoke resilience. One is our new Healthy Homes Grant Program that is about comprehensive health repairs, but repairs to homes to keep people in their homes. But a lot of the keeping them safe in these days involves protection from smoke and extreme fire. And that request for grant applications we give grants to organizations that in turn do the work on people's homes. And, you know, for communities with low income, and certainly a priority is folks who are in high smoke risk areas. And I will put a link in the chat if you all are interested. There's a wide array of entities that are eligible, you know, counties, think your Habitat for Humanities type folks, but there's a lot of folks are eligible. We have a set aside for the tribes of $1.5 million, and then $8.5 million is competitive grants. And would love for folks help spreading the word on that. And that bill also has funding for our another part of OHA to renew the funding available for air filtration devices and portable air conditioners. So again, smoke and extreme heat protections. So that's Senate Bill 1530. And then we continue to work with DEQ on the community response plan work. We think it's getting more and more important every day. And so I don't know if people have interest in that. Certainly Jennifer's point on that for DEQ. We support with reviews and bringing health to the table. We have internally in OHA have been resourcing over the last couple of years our local public health authorities, county public health departments, as well as tribes and local community-based organizations to work on climate and health work in their communities and to be at the table for these conversations. So that continues to be a big priority for our agency. And then we'll hear more, I guess, about the West Bend pilot. I think what people are referring to as the tabletop exercise. That's kind of now no longer a tabletop or an exercise. And that is a big priority for our engagement also, since it'll be a significant pilot effort for what we might see in terms of large burns in proximity to population areas. And OHA has been at the table with our DEQ and ODF partners to say, smoke is bad. Smoke is bad no matter what, but if it prevents more catastrophic impacts to community, then we are supportive of this work, so long as you help communities prepare for that and get to vulnerable populations so that they can make plans, allocate resources, get to make safe air places in their homes, or know how to access safe air places, or make plans to leave. So that takes organization and planning ahead of time, and support for our local county public health and other partners. So that's a really big priority for us, and happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you, Gabriella. Appreciate that. We have 3 minutes left. Does anybody else have a report out before we get to the public comment period? Okay, if not, I have a follow-up question for Stacy that you talked about previously about hiring. I totally understand that. So we're not talking about budget and finances during this particular SMAC meeting, but the question I have is, do you anticipate you're going to be able to cover that added expenses through just the increased amount of burning that's happening? Or are you thinking we're going to need to raise fees at some point?
Yeah, so at this point, it's kind of up in the air, right? We're waiting to see what's going to come out of the short session, what changes, come to ODF. And then, we just really need to drill into those numbers, right? To figure that out. Can the existing fund afford another meteorologist? And we'll go from there. So at this point, we're just kind of in the wait and see. We know we have a major need, and we're just working towards that. So I don't really have any concrete answers for you.
Okay, well, consider it just prompting for our next SMAC meeting when we go through the numbers. Those are some of the key questions we'll be wondering, and I know Tim will do a good job just kind of sharing some of those numbers with us. So,
yes,
thank you.
Absolutely. Yep. Thanks, Rick.
All right. Well, we're 2 minutes ahead of time, but I think we could now move into the public comment period. So at this point, are there any members of the public who have any comments that they'd like to share with the advisory group? I don't see anything in the chat. So Stacy, how would you like to work this then? Do you want to try and move ahead on our schedule and take our break now? Or and we could try and end it earlier than planned? Or how would you like to proceed?
Yeah, I say we just go ahead and take our break. I think everybody who is talking later in the morning, they're all here. So I say we just kind of forge ahead. Is that good with everyone else on the committee?
Yeah, that's works for me.
Okay.
So we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll resume back at 9:45, everyone. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Right. I have 9:45 on my clock. So I think we could get started again. And we're going to move into the fall burning overview. And I believe this is a report out from ODF. Let me try that again. I believe
Yeah.
this is a report out from ODF.
Yeah, sorry about that. My finger is clicking too fast on that video screen and causing me to spaz with the caffeine I had this morning. So, okay, so let me share my screen. Second, the Zoom thing is right in the way. Hold on. There we go. Okay, do you guys see my screen okay?
We
Yes.
see the PowerPoint program.
PowerPoint program. How do I?
If you click on that present in Teams, I fumble my way towards it, but that often works
Present in Teams.
in the upper right.
Upper right. I see.
That unfortunately that might not work because this is a Zoom meeting.
Okay, so
Oh
I'm gonna
gosh, of course. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What does this say? Black or unblack slideshow? What does this do? Anything different for you guys? Not. Okay. No, stop. Yeah. Okay, how do I? Good. I have help. Hang on, guys. Sorry. Yeah.
Now we see the presentation.
All right, cool. Okay, my apologies for that. All right, so now will it move forward? Maybe I need to do it manually. All right. Okay, so that was just basically for the theatrics. We have fire, and we can have good fire, or we can have catastrophic smoke from fire that's not that's burning out of our parameters. And as we all know, we prefer the prescribed fire smoke because it's just a few days versus a wildfire that could be weeks and weeks, if not months and months at a time. So then, okay, so on my screen here, it says the sweet smell of success. So one of the things, in my opinion, that we've had a successful year is all the collaboration, the awareness that's happening among all the different agencies, people that, you know, in the past have kind of been at odds. Now everybody's talking, we're starting to see the same page, we're looking for solutions together. So in my mind, we're having a successful season, a successful year. And I have that little girl firefighter there. It's kind of what we're all, whether you're a firefighter or a medical professional, and air regulatory or just public, we really all want our air to be good. And we also want to keep Oregon green and keep our forest healthy. So I believe in dreaming big and letting, you know, the sky is not the limit. We go beyond that. And then just for the folks who are new, one of the things that we do as a requirement of the state implementation plan or the smoke program in Oregon is that we monitor how we're doing. And so how we monitor that is through fuel loading, what we call fuel loading audits. I go out to the field, I randomly pick places, and I measured their fuel loading and what they estimated as tonnage or emissions that they were putting into the air, and see if we come close. And so that's kind of what I'm doing. So this year we had 34 burn days and pre-burn day audits completed in 23. We try to shoot for, so if we had like 3,000 burns, then we try to get 30. So we're right in the mix right there. And this also includes some courtesy audits from other agencies who may not be within ODF jurisdiction. An example of that is like Fish and Wildlife or NRCS. They might be doing some burning. They're not necessarily within ODF boundary, but out of courtesy and also understanding that it's good to play nice in the sandbox for all of us, they give us calls, and usually we'll follow our smoke guidelines regardless. So that's super helpful. So audits happen, they're selected randomly for the most part. I will do intentional audits in areas that I haven't visited yet. Audits may be done for areas showing a trend that warrants a little bit more analysis, areas that are showing abnormal fire behavior, areas with a unique burn, areas showing abnormal fuel moistures, or areas showing abnormal weather patterns. And so I'm going to preface it, this year I was focused on the West Bend project. So the numbers are a little bit different, I think, than we would normally have in other years, because there was a little more attention giving to that West Bend project, which I think is going to be very helpful. And so for the pre-burn ownership, this means before they put fire to it, the pre-burn, we did about 70% Forest Service and about 26% private, 4% other. And then for the actual burn day, it just worked out that it was almost the opposite. So it was 56% private, and private's usually within the ODF jurisdiction, and 33% Forest Service, 11% other. So again, they're random for the most part, and that's how that kind of worked out. So then for your burn day smoke tonnage audits, now you see the in 2023, it looks, it's very small. That's not reflecting the amount of burning that happened. We had more burning, more ignitions, all that, but the auditing and the tonnage just happened to be small. Again, partially, I think that was because I was focused on some of the smaller units out in West Bend. But anyways, it's just kind of a graph to show the tonnages. Smaller samples in 2013. And then the acreage. So this slide is basically showing the acreages of piled burns versus under burns. That which is reported and that which is audited for acreage is usually always fairly close. The reason what was audited might be smaller is because maybe they didn't get the whole unit done, or maybe they broke the unit into chunks for better smoke management purposes. So average burns estimated equally for the acres. Now, on our tonnage percentages, so now we're talking tons, not acres. It was kind of a weird, like I said, this is not how I normally see this. But if you look over in the pre-burn, you'll see that there were 4 burns that were underestimated. That's a purple. 15 that were right in the money, and then 4 that were overestimated for tonnage. Again, that has to do because I was really focused in on one area. We were working together to come up with our tonnages. So that's one of the reasons I think that we had very close estimations on the pre-burn. On the burn days, it was equally over and underestimated as far as the units that I hit. Not really sure what caused that. Again, it was random. Some of it had to do with some education, people not knowing how to do a fuel loading transact, different stuff. So I always take opportunities when I come into either an overestimation or underestimation to teach people how to either maximize their burning if they're underestimating, and how to keep themselves out of trouble if they're over. Or, yeah, flip that if they're over. So then one of the cool things that we got to do this year was some cultural burning. Amanda has been working with the tribes. Now that we brought her in, she's doing an excellent job of getting these partnerships and collaboration and doing some cultural burning. There she is with her boy and the Grand Ron chief in the background. So super cool picture. The cool thing about some of the native burning is often because of the way our media works, people are super afraid of wildfire, especially if they've experienced or been in a bad wildfire. Often when the tribe hires firefighters, they spend a lot of time educating their troops to not be a fire. The natives have used fires for thousands of years. They see it as a being, as a person, as a tool to be respected and to be used as in good fire. So here you see some kids learning about fire can be good if you respect it. And they also, teach about the reason I like cultural burning is they're initially and focusing on things that are going to improve some sort of either wildlife habitat or plant or herb or something that they're using. And on this particular one, they were fumigating the trees to get certain insects out of the leaves so the harvest would be better. And I just thought, again, it's an excellent way to do burning. I think personally that there's a key in learning how to do more cultural burning. And here you see, I had an FMO that used to say, kind of snarky about it, but used to say you could fight fire, pretty much naked and not get hurt if you knew what you were doing and you were safe about it. So on the one hand, you see like the cultural tradition of the kids out there with no PPE, personal protective equipment on. And then you have the other person who's also representing an agency. We have laws and regulations where you do have to wear some PPE. So you kind of see an honoring of both cultures there. And for me, it's just refreshing to get back to the idea that sometimes the best medicine is the ancient wisdom. So anyway, so we got to do a lot of that. That was super fun, super cool. One of the things we do also is to support wildland fire. And also for me, particular the days, I have a certain amount of days that I need to be on a fire to relieve our budget. So the more days I'm on a fire to relieve our budget is helpful. This year I got to go to Pennsylvania, North Carolina. There I am with the legendary Steve Zill, Mr. F-Ban himself. So that was very fun and educational. I got to see some pretty cool ground, and also went as an air resource advisor, which supports the Forest Service Interagency Wildland Fire Air Quality Response Program. I think that's also a perfect fit that helps ODF, Forest Service, and other agencies collaborating again together. Also, this year I got to go to S420, which is a requirement for certain team members, and I've always got out prioritized. So this is a picture of the team logo and mascot that we built. We were Washington, Oregon together, Team 2 on this class. What that did is that allowed me to officially get signed off as a Type 2 safety officer. So the smoke management program is providing a safety officer out there on wildland fire. So this is a good win for all of us. Okay, public education. We did get to go out to the tree school in Clackamas and share. I worked with Margaret Miller, share a little bit about the program and resources, how burners can learn how to estimate their tonnage and how they work through the process of getting smoke clearance. That's a picture of a really cool tree between some buildings, and it just kind of like, this is the era we're in now. We've got, communities right up against the forest, and just thought that was a pretty cool picture. Also, I try to go out and get recent graduates or young people, and they come out with me and do some volunteer work, learning how to do what I do, and also learning about smoke management, learning about prescribed fire, these kinds of things. We also got to go to the EPA conference in Seattle. We did some artificial intelligence, AI training and experiments with we're trying to get it so that you can take a picture of your fuels and it gives you your tonnage just by photo recognition. That's still in the works. Working with Richard Pasquale over on Bend on using like Survey 123 and trying to find ways that the different agencies can collaborate their monitoring data and have easy access for all the different agencies. I think will be helpful. We're still working on a lot of bugs on that, but I think it's going to be cool. Also, when I go out into the different places, I got to go to Mount Hare and John Day and help with training the new smoke database registration process, working with some dispatchers, working with some of the key AFMO, FMOs of fuels and whatnot. So that was a good deal. Also, partnerships and collaborations. Again, I got to work with Rick. We went out there and tromped around in miles and miles and miles of snow in the very cold. And this is the friendly part. Some of it was like past our knees. I got very tired and had to turn around because I needed lunch. So anyways, collecting data, especially on stumps, for the West Bend project. And I won't say too much on that because it sounds like maybe Rick's going to talk about that, but we had a lot of people involved in there doing those deep analysis between meteorology, fuel loading, topography, and stumps. So again, a super successful year because we're all starting to work together. And I think it's great. I'm excited to see what's going to come out on the other end, even though trudging through the snow and working through some of the hard parts is exactly that hard. I think it's going to pay off in the end. And then finally, I just want to put out there that that was my 33-year-old fire shirt that rolled with me everywhere. And I finally had to retire it because it ripped, and it wasn't just it was a bad tear. So I was sad. So now I have a brand new bright rookie no mix shirt. So I invite you guys to invite me out to your units when you're burning. Let me know when you're burning, especially if you've got like a campaign. We're going to be burning for several days and I have time to get out there. If you have a unique burn, if you have an experimental burn, if you have a burn of concern, whatever it is, invite me out there. I'm happy to come out. I'm happy to come out to your crews and teach your engines or whoever it is how to do a simple fuel loading transect and that type of stuff. And if there's any questions, I'm going to turn it over. If there's not any questions, I'm going to turn it over to Sherry. So now
Hey, Christina, this is Rick.
Yes.
I had a question for you.
Yes.
So where in those locations that you were seeing big differences between the audit fuel loading estimates that you did and the estimates provided by the landowners or managers, were they typically in pretty light fuels, heavy fuels, or just it just varied all over the place?
I think some of it I got to go to a lot of private landowners who maybe aren't as in the loop of how you do the fuel estimations. And so a lot of private guys didn't even know about fuel loading estimations. So that's part of it. I think the other part was people learning how to do the smoke database system and registering it on time. So sometimes I didn't find out about a burn until like the day of, which is actually pretty common. So I'm rushing out there trying to get there on time and it's already ignited. So once it's ignited, it's kind of difficult to get a pre-burn fuel audit. So that was some of the reasons that if that's the case, if the unit's already burning and I don't have time to get ahead and get a good representative fuel loading transect, then I got to go with the numbers that they report. So it just looks like it's like everything is perfect on the numbers, even, but then it's just a burn day. Like, what did the smoke behavior do? Does that answer the question?
It sounds to me, yeah, it does. It sounds like that the work that you're doing is just so helpful in terms of helping people understand how to get and obtain correct fuel loading estimates, that so we could have a better management of our smoke. And so I just want to thank you. You're just doing an awesome job, Christina.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Right. Is there another report from ODF?
There is. It's from me.
Oh, hey, sir.
I'm Sherry. I am adding on to Christina's talk and her amazing work in the field with some of the efforts that we did in the office to help support her and then, of course, support the program. So I'm going to share my screen. Are you able to see February 22nd of the?
Yep, we can see it.
Fantastic. So I'm going to give some of the numbers for the year. This is created from our burn accomplishments. Christina did a lot of work and Stacy as well in getting our database ready so that burns can be added. So this is the numbers I was able to pull from. As a note as well, because we were burning into the winter now, I do want to include some of those numbers. So I didn't kind of stop it at the end. I included January, for example, to have some of those numbers as well. And we'll talk about some of that winter burning. So just a comparison of last year of the fall winter season to this year. And you can see that the generally numbers are up and they continue to grow, especially as we are kind of after the pandemic dropped some of the numbers. You can see those numbers are growing. So this is wanted to be able to share this information for you. This is something that in previous SMAC meetings that's been requested. So we wanted to share this data. I also wanted to give a focus in on January, just as we're talking about how our forecast and the burning continues into the winter now. In previous years, before, you would see less burning. And this kind of reflects that. You see the 2020 where it was just before the pandemic, you see the numbers come down and you see that we are exceeding those numbers now in this past January, for example. Burning continues into the winter. And for one of those reasons, we're keeping our forecast going as well. Previously, we were able to have a little bit more of a pause. We could kind of stop some of our forecasts maybe on the Northeast or the South Central sides, but that's not the case for the past couple of years at least. We continue to have those burns into the winter and also the phone calls where we're focusing on individual burns so we can help in those situations as well. We always show during our SMAC meeting the intrusions and the incidents for the kind of the past fall. We did not have any intrusions where it met those thresholds. We did have 4 smoke incidents that I'm going to give kind of the data about and then some more details as well. So we have all the information. And to know also, one of these incidents would have been an intrusion under our older rules as well. So let's look at those numbers a little more closely. This is the full data on where we had incidents. We didn't have intrusions this past fall. It was 3 of the burns that were incidents at Chiloquin. Smoke was being moved into the region, and we were able to communicate with them about their smoke. We had a lot of phone calls and such. So you'll see a kind of a difference in that there was a longer duration during kind of the first incidents, and then when they burned later on December, much less, smaller duration as we worked with them, trying to keep smoke out of Klamath Falls and things like that for that burn. There was also an incident at Coos Bay. There was a cold front that came through and was able to kind of move that smoke from that we were found from a prescribed burn and able to make an incident level. So that one is noted as well. So notes on these incidents, it's the Coos Bay burn that would have been an intrusion with the past rules, but it is an incident with the current rules. Also want to note that there was another event during this time, during the fall time at Coos Bay that we did a lot of research on, hours and hours of work that we were not able to pin to a prescribed burn. So therefore it was not an incident or an intrusion, but it took up a lot of time to figure out that a prescribed burn could not be linked to that smoke event. There was other burning at that time, and it was not part of forest land prescribed burning. It's just an extremely difficult situation when you spend a lot of time looking for and trying to figure out a situation like that when it's tricky. So that's an example we wanted to show. And then, like I mentioned, for the Chiloquin, there was a lot of conversations about that smoke so that we could be really conscious about it and where it was moving into that town as well. Other intrusion notes, that's the burn I mentioned about Coos Bay, where it couldn't be pinned to a prescribed burning event. So that's kind of our summary for the incidents and intrusions for the fastball. I do want to look at and talk about the weather. I'm a meteorologist. That's obviously near and dear to my heart. We had an El Nino fall, those conditions. And so during September, we had a lot of rainfall. It was wetter than usual. And as a result of that, we already started getting some phone calls about burning and getting clearances in September. And we started our instructions, our forecast instructions that we send out and email and post. It was the very first Monday of October. So we started the season, going because of that September rainfall that was able to help us out. It was followed up by a very dry October and November. A lot of burning got done during that time. A lot of that with that drier and kind of is actually warmer as well. There's a lot of inversions that set up as an addition, and I'll talk about how that kind of impacted our work as well. So that was kind of the start of the fall weather. And then as we headed in, it was not until December that we really started to get some of the snowpack starting to build. Some, it wasn't a spectacular snowpack, but it tried to start building. So it wasn't until December. So there was, a lot of burning until some of that snowpack was able to build to a degree. And then January was another very wet month, that we looked into as well. So that was kind of the weather trends for our fall into the winter season and how kind of impacted our burning. And I mentioned the inversions that we experience where it's able to trap kind of local smoke and not ventilate out as well. That was something that would at times drive the smoke levels up to, say, an intrusion level, even though there's not prescribed burning that contributed. So with those inversions and also with wood stoves are also able to bring smoke into levels that were intrusion levels. That takes a lot of work and time to investigate, calling several different offices, calling burn bosses in addition to see if prescribed burns that were nearby contributed. Whenever you have that poor air quality or the inversions, it's going to limit what we can burn. We're going to not burn as close to an SSRA during those conditions, because if you put, of course, a bit of additional smoke, you'll reach intrusion levels. So if 99% is local smoke, but the 1% of that smoke is from a prescribed burn that reaches an intrusion level, that's important for us to note. That becomes an intrusion. So part of our work this past fall was a lot of looking into if a prescribed burn was contributing to those high levels, kind of looking for ghosts at times, a bit of a chase, and doing the diligent effort to make sure that if we found an intrusion level, that we are able to do that work to see if a prescribed burn contributed to it. Also note, when we use our smoke instructions, it's going to assume a clean air mass. So the instructions that we provide on tonnages that can be burned expects that nephelometers are green and that kind of thing. So a lot of times, especially even this fall, we will put in our discussions that this is not a time to burn near an SSRA or things like that, because we're going to have to limit those burns because of those kinds of conditions. Inversions with local smokes and also wood stoves, bringing up to that category of intrusions. I want to talk about the program notes. That some of this is what Stacy had mentioned as well about some of maybe the smoke model changes, and we've discussed so far in this meeting already. We've had some increased burning near SSRAs. We're going to talk extensively about West Bend. Not so much in the fall did we help, but it's certainly back in the spring we're able to provide forecasts to West Bend area. Another area is the Ashland Medford SSRA. We're doing, at times daily calls with them for burns that are very close to the SSRA, sometimes almost into the SSRA. Small tonnages, but to make sure that, we're being careful about the smoke there. So we have increased burning near the SSRAs. We did our written forecast I mentioned through the winter, kind of a request to the field so that we were able to provide those forecasts just through the, burning didn't stop. There was no pause. And then those phone calls we get about these individual burns near SSRAs, they're really important to help prevent intrusions and incidents, even though they do take up a lot of time. They take up a lot of time and resources to have, the calls kind of limits us to doing other things that we need to do for the program, but they are really important because they help to have more healthy smoke levels, which is our goal. We noted the smoke model changes because of a few things. One thing is that, weather models these days are getting a little bit better, arguably, depending on who you ask. They're certainly getting better and more dependable for that 3 to 4 day range. And we had edits made to the models, our smoke models, so that it's more easy for us to put a forecast out that can go through the weekend. So some of the benefits of that is you can plan with your weekday crew on Friday, what your weekday crew on Monday is going to want to burn. We can supply that because we're giving those forecasts out through the weekend. We, of course, spoke to the field about this and not having a regular weekend forecaster. That's something that's likely going to continue into this spring, is not having that weekend coverage, because we don't have that weekend coverage, and talking with the field about that as well. It kind of helps us to better support our Mondays and Fridays, which are really busy times. A lot of phone calls on the Monday morning, a lot of phone calls on Friday afternoon for crews that are trying to, determine their weekend or figure out all the way into their Monday. Without the weekend forecaster being kind of pulled away from those days because they're filling in on the weekend, we're able to support those better. So that worked out really well. Let's see if there's any more notes for our program. I think that covers it, what we wanted to convey. And then new rules, more burning, of course. I want to note, kind of as a final thought, our program's evolving. There's different things that are needed now than were needed before, different kinds of burning, obviously different amounts of burning as we continue to burn a lot, different timing. We're keeping connected with the field. Christina really helps with that as well to make sure that we're up to date and communicating well. And we reach out also to make sure that anything that we kind of change matches that. It's a really busy time. There's a lot of pull of our resources, and we're working really hard to keep up with all those changes and differences. I think that concludes my report.
Yeah, thank you, Sherry. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions. We are moving on. Well, we have to move on in terms of our agenda. But I thank you and Gary and Pete for all the great work that you're doing, and Stacy for overseeing the group of you all as well. So thank you for that. I think now we have to move on to the national and regional prescribed fire priorities. And I think, Tim, is this, you're leading this section here?
I think I can take first swing, and then Rick, if you want to hop in with the, I think you're the other major partner in this, and then we can compare notes at the end here. That works for you. Okay. So I think we're going to wrap a few things in this one, and it's kind of a vague agenda topic, but that was kind of the intention with it. And so a lot of movement in prescribed fire across a few other things. So we got, folks, the EPA is looking at the Clean Air Act in a couple different avenues. The Forest Service put together their wildfire crisis strategy as well to address the wildfire challenges. And with that kind of created some opportunities for some coordination. So a few things happened this spring that kind of spawned this agenda topic. Is back in the EPA and the Forest Service at the Washington D.C. level decided to try to evaluate smoke management in a couple pilot projects across state tabletop exercises. There's two of them that were chosen, West Bend in Oregon here, and then the other location was Georgia. I'm not sure exactly where in Georgia, but it was the other tabletop exercise. So the southeast, which regionally does a significant amount of burning, but has a completely different terrain type than what we face out in the western U.S. here. And then West Bend, that we all know or have a lot of conversations about the challenges there and the critical need for completing more prescribed burning. So back in November, there was a group of folks that met together. It was representatives from Washington, D.C., from the EPA and from the U.S. Forest Service were there. Also the regional EPA had representation there. The Regional Forest Service, Local Forest Service, Department of Forestry, Oregon Health Authority, and DEQ. It was pretty unique. It's the first time kind of everyone's been in the same room with each other. So that was provided some good opportunities. But so we met for 2 days back in November and really gave a good overview. The forest gave an awesome overview over the challenges of West Bend in particular. The Forest Service did a great job just walking through what their critical needs are and tying it to forest management strategies and the other priorities besides just fire protection, but also silviculturally related, and the challenges of working in there, but also the community engagement they highlighted. We walked through that. We walked through a day in the life of preparing for burning, and then also walked through the regulatory side as well. We had some central tables there. Everyone was in the hot seat, got peppered with questions from all sides. But we got to hear everyone's story with it and an overview of everyone's perspectives. what came out of it is we're a lot closer in alignment than what may seem at times, but also an acceptance of sharing of risk with that it's a shared responsibility to get the work done, and we're all responsible as agencies to engage with the public as well, and the critical nature of social license and community engagement to have that community protection. So the balancing of public health and the mitigation work that needs to be done to be successful in this arena. So it was I'd consider it a very productive 2 days over there, and it wasn't just the end of the it just didn't just end there. That was kind of the start of a series of conversations that happened. So shortly after that, I'm gonna share my screen here. Share, there we go. I always love how Zoom just moves all your stuff. Okay, is my screen shared? Because otherwise my computer's frozen.
It is not shared, Tim. Now it is shared.
Okay. That's good. It's like playing roulette. Okay. So what came out of this shortly after the week after this meeting, there was a national MOU that was signed. So some folks may have seen this, but the Department of Agriculture, the Department of the Interior, Center for Disease Control, and the EPA, the agency or cabinet heads signed these, or directors got together and started comparing notes. So we can't have, if one cabinet is trying to work on increasing pace and scale of prescribed burning and Congress is putting investments into the air, or putting investments on the ground, they need to get the work done, and another agency can't tie that up. So with that, there was also a recommendation of the Wildland Fire Management Committee that was established under the infrastructure or the Inflation Reduction Act, and some of the legislation that went through of addressing the wildfire crisis. And that committee's recommendations was that the EPA and the Forest Service and the land management agencies kind of figure it out, to put it bluntly. So what we have here is just the start of that conversation. I will share this. This will get shared in the meeting materials and also get posted in the meeting notes for the public to view too. But this public, and wanted to hit a couple goals on it and just highlight them as protecting public from adverse health impacts of wildland fire smoke. That's the first one. And to engage in work together under existing laws to clarify and align regulations, policy, and practice. Collaborate on forecasting and monitoring. Look at new technologies. Identify opportunities to share tools. Continue support of interagency wildland fire air quality response programs. Collaborate with tribes, states, local agencies, and partners. Those are all good things. That's what we do at this meeting here even. Additionally, they had some highlights of areas of interagency collaboration, of a vision of recognizing the increasing application of prescribed fire, committing to work together, invest in measures to protect public health, shared understanding of how smoke is treated in air quality, working for opportunities to disseminate information and tools, and also to improve activity tracking, telling our story, focusing on community preparedness, pathways to align public health and land management, and then data collection. So kind of some big, really big rocks in this one. Shortly after this came out on November 8th. So we went from, I'm gonna scroll back up here. Hopefully I don't make anybody sick. So from the tabletop exercise in Bend on November 1st and 2nd, we moved to this national MOU that was signed on November 8th. And then on November 13th, there was a regional meeting between agency heads and regional directors of, so it was Region 6 Regional Forester, Region 10 Director of the EPA, and also agency leads from both Washington and Oregon. So there's Washington Department of Natural Resources, Washington Department of Ecology, Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, and Oregon Department of Forestry got together and wanted to leverage this MOU to see how it applied regionally, knowing that we had these conversations in West Bend and they were having other areas in the region, the Wenatchee region, that they wanted to utilize to try to work through some of these challenging areas and also commit to how this MOU would apply locally or between the two states. And out of that conversation, came a joint statement of intent to cooperate on prescribed fire and smoke management. This was just signed Tuesday by the directors. So we have the Forest Service and the EPA, the Department of Forestry and DEQ, Washington Health, Washington Ecology, DNR, and Oregon Health Authority. So with those, it's the entities, the connection between public health and outreach, and also the land management agencies and the air regulators to for this. And this document will also be shared. This addressed a couple things, and it did mirror. It references the national MOU, but it also hit a few things in here. So, acting with urgency. So we got money, we got resources. Let's get the work done. Protecting public health, safety, and property. Identifying and overcoming limiting factors. Be innovative and comprehensive, and then also try new approaches to learn and adapt based on experiences. So those are the main aspects in it. And then it also, this one was really neat in this last paragraph here does highlight applying the principles for projects West Bend and then North Central Washington. So highlighting, how this pie in the sky MOU and that type of language applies downwards into on the ground activities and has a connection. So with that, there's a significant interest and support for prescribed burning. And also with investments, as Gabriella mentioned, this even state of Oregon is looking at investments into public health and resiliency, connecting with our partners and trying to leverage the social license that we've worked so hard on building and try to put that on the ground. So with that, Rick, I think you have a few things, and we probably might have some time for questions on this one.
Yeah, I think this is probably more of a area of interest than just knowing where the Forest Service is planning doing burning.
Yeah, it'll be good.
Well, let me add on a little bit to what turn on my video here. So let's get down to the tactical aspects of this. So in West Bend, when we left that meeting in November, I think a lot of people were interested. Let's try something, go big, try a really big burn over in the West Bend project area. We thought we could do that under the existing rules because, even if it caused the 24-hour average of the PM 2.5 concentrations to go greater than 35 micrograms per cubic meter. The EPA rules, the NACs, allow 7 exceedances of that. But if we're going to let go, if we're not going to use the intrusion thresholds for protecting public health, we need an alternative way to protect public health. Right? We're just not going to go burn and put out smoke without caring about the public. So that's what this project is all about. We're going to explore more opportunities for how to protect public health. And so that's part of what I will call the research side of this project. And so we have a project team that's been established, and that is being conducted under the incident command structure that we use on wildfires or other disasters, the same kind of structure. So think of this not as a wildfire incident, but the planning for this is an event. And so we have an incident command, incident commander, which is Kevin Larkin, who's the deputy forest supervisor for the Deschutes National Forest. And within his team, He's got operations chief, which is Dina Wall and Trevor Miller. And they're going to be, part of that operations is going to be let the forest fuel staff lead what the burn's going to look like. We don't want that dictated by other people who are not as knowledgeable and know all the nuances associated with the burning. But what they've been proposing is not one big burn. They don't believe that we have the social and political license for that, nor it might present too big of a risk to burn people's back, basically, very close to people's backyards. So what they've been proposing is more, let's look at this across the season, the spring burning season. Let's try to get our 2,000 acres accomplished roughly. And, if the weather dictates that we get those 7 opportunities to burn this spring, then we could still go with the established unit sizes. They're still in the 200 to 300, maybe 400 acre size units out there. So we're not talking about burning 1,500 or 3,500 acres on a single day. No, this is more, let's go with what's planned out there. But if we get exceed an intrusion threshold, we're going to not stop, take a pause, and do an after action review. We're going to continue on. Well, how can we do that in light of public health? Well, how are we going to protect public health? Well, I'd probably defer to Gabriella and Sarah Worthington with Deschutes County Public Health in terms of the methodologies of doing that. But there's going to be, what I understand, and is that we're going to be doing more communications. So we're going to be doing more predicting where the smoke is going to go, both during the daytime and at nighttime. They're 2 different animals, so to speak. And we're trying some different modeling approaches to determine where those likely populations are going to be of people who are going to experience smoke. And we're going to do a lot more outreach to that community, help them understand how to protect themselves. There might be a component where there's a distribution of clean, high efficiency particulate air filters for people's homes, but I don't know that for certain, but it might be part of the process. There'll be daily forecasts like we have that ARAs issued during wildfire season for wildfire events to prepare forecasts using these new research type models or different types of modeling approaches than what ODF does right now. And there'll be a lot of surveys and protections they're using what behaviors they're modifying to protect themselves and what their general acceptability of this is. Because, sometimes we want to get a good sense. We want to hear from everybody. So get a sense that, I'm sure not everybody's going to like it, but if it's 95% of the people that, are not in favor of this, that tells you a whole different something than a level of acceptability than, a large percent of the people being okay with it and having a small minority of people impacted. But it depends on what kind of health impacts they're having. Certainly, we don't want to kill anybody with smoke. We don't want to send anyone to the hospital and have them, shorten lifespans, et cetera. So there's a lot to consider there. And I'm talking about things that are really beyond my own expertise. I'm heading up one of the groups that is on the modeling and the monitoring components with the help of a lot of people. Right now, EPA is working with EPA modelers to calibrate our models and see how well they perform against the previous dozen attempts we've had of burning in West Bend, in which we had intrusions, and seeing how well these new modeling approaches work. Then we're going to anticipate what the synoptic weather conditions are during some of the burns, and we're going to run our models and get that information out to Gabriella and her team so they know well in advance where they might expect smoke under different weather scenarios. And then during the actual day of burn this spring or the day before, we'll have a smoke forecast produced by air resource advisors who are trained on these new types of models, and they'll be disseminating that information as well. I believe there will be both outdoor and indoor air quality monitoring going on to understand what the differences are in exposure. And that's just some aspects. There'll be a whole aspect of community outreach and communication that goes above and beyond what we've been doing out there. And again, it's all highly structured in this organization under the incident command team structure. So let me stop there and see if there's any questions.
I'd be impressed with the intro to the topic this morning, that we hit everything right off the bat, but that was a good synopsis of the pilot plan, Rick.
Oh, thanks. Right, I've not seen any questions. So that's surprising, but that's good. All right, well, I could move on to the thing you asked me to report on, Tim, is like, where's the Forest Service plan on doing burning this spring? Can you pull up that map that I share, that figure?
Yeah, you say you wanted me to pull that up, Rick?
Yeah, I don't have it here. So,
okay, let me
I provided it to Stacy.
Yep. Give me 1 second. I'll pull it out of the meeting invite here. Did want to say this project in West Bend is going to be a pretty awesome one to help. That's one of the reasons, Scott, of delaying some of the changes, or some of the delaying the routine in the 5-year cycle for the rule updates, is also to integrate in some of the things we learn from this, because the timeliness of it is will help as we go through that, and we can be a little more comprehensive and nimble with some of these, integrate in some of these national conversations instead of having to do things twice. So that was one of the reasons for delaying as well. But
okay, all right, well, so this map is just something that was pulled off of the Forest Service's fuels dashboard, kind of showing you the locations on a map where prescribed fire is anticipated. And I would focus not so much on the size or the color of the dots right now, but just the locations to begin with. So more burning down in the Rogue Valley to be coming. That's an area of high wildfire risk. And so again, to do a lot of restoration and maintenance burning there. The Fremont Wainema, again, similar kind of risk from wildfire, so a big emphasis there. And then out in the Deschutes in National Forest, always doing a lot of prescribed fire around there. Ochico, Prineville, another area. The Malheur and the Wallowa Whitney National Forest, the Umatilla as well. The things that's not showed here where I do expect an increase that we haven't seen that much burning is over the Mount Hood area too. So Mount Hood is one of the priority landscapes for the wildfire crisis. And I expect them to start ramping up more of their fuel treatment, if not this year, in the years to come. So that has potential for impacting communities, Estacada, that, we could look at Hood River, the Dalles, even into Portland potential. So for my forecasting friends up there in Salem, that might be a new area of focus that we haven't seen that much in past years. So, and then I think these numbers in the table to the left are underburned acres, what we're expecting. And well, they're the 22 to 24 time period. So that's why the Malheur, I believe, is so big. And the Deschutes, that's what the size of the circles represent there. So, and I believe the color has to, and I can't read the chart because it's kind of the top part, but I think the color has to do with the wildfire risk, where we're treating acres with very high wildfire hazardous potential. That's what, a lot of areas we've done before, you know, our common areas, and we've got watch out areas around Baker City. You know, we could get down the Powder River drainage with smoke intrusions into Baker City. That's a challenging area. Generally in Malheur, we don't have too much trouble, except maybe drainage into Drowned Day, sometimes problematic there. Umatilla, other than that, years ago when we had that incident in putting smoke in LeGrand, we usually don't have too many issues there. Prineville, not too much of a problem. The chutes, of course, West Bend. Road burning around Medford and Ashland, certainly potential. Even the Roseburg area, some potential. Willamette's an area that's seen a lot of wildfire issues and smoke from there, but we have that mountain attainment area in Oak Ridge to got to watch out for. And we have a maintenance area in Lakeview. So some tricky areas to burn around, but that's what's planned for this coming spring. Any questions? SJ, I know you've had some involvement out in the Malheur.
Yeah,
great.
I like those numbers.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's all I had. And so, are there any questions on what either Tim or I presented? If not, we're 5 minutes ahead of schedule, which is awesome. And we can move on to the rule-making process. And I'm not sure, it doesn't say on the agenda who's leading us in that discussion. So I'm sure somebody out there knows who's leading us.
Yep, I'll go ahead and start that off. If I could. I'm going to share. Let's see. Sorry. So while I'm finding my PowerPoint here, once again, just introduce myself, Ryan Miller. I'm Administrative Rules Specialist within the Protection Division. And I'm going to be talking briefly about just kind of process-wise what this might look like as far as a statutory review of the rules. I think I maybe got it. Let's see. There. Are you guys seeing that now?
Yes,
Yep.
we are.
Perfect.
Yes.
So a couple of legs of what we need to do here as far as the rules go and the review of those. Kind of combine some efforts. Really, we have, you know, our statutory obligation to review the rules. There's required elements there that we need to ask and kind of vet out and make sure we're staying in alignment there. Part of that will be ensuring that references are still up to date, terminology is still, you know, accurate, hasn't changed, those sorts of things. So kind of technical fixes, if there are any. If nothing else, we'll be able to document that we're good to go there as far as the technical side of things. What we stumbled upon early on was, you know, if we're going to do a rule review, which is actually by statute really minimal, and not really adequate to make sure the program is going down the right path. I'll just put it that way. You know, there's an opportunity here to kind of tag along and make sure that the program is doing what we want it to do. You know, Tim mentioned, you know, kind of reevaluating after the West Bend project, and there's a bunch of other factors that are going to be coming into play this spring. And so some of, you know, that information is going to help, you know, kind of determine and guide the program. Are we hitting the mark? Are we doing the right things? Do we need to update, you know, processes, procedures, so forth and so on? Some of that might require additional rulemaking or rule changes. And if so, you know, that's great. Let's get that done. But I want to just kind of point out there's two separate legs of this effort here. My role in that really is kind of a facilitator, a convener, and you know, guiding the rulemaking process down the path. But you all, you know, and the folks, Stacy and her shop are really the subject matter experts, certainly not me. So just to clarify that. What we've got put together, I worked with some folks in Stacy's shop to kind of come up with a survey. Also worked with Margaret before she left us to kind of come up with the required questions that we have to do for a statutory rule review. And then what else can we kind of try to find out and learn? And so step one of the rule review is really just asking the question, like, are we where we need to be? Are we hitting the mark? What do we need to report on as required? And then what can we learn from folks? So it's an opportunity to seek input. My hope is to get that out next week, that survey. We'll do one last kind of quick, check in here internally, and then get that out to all of you, and likely some other external, folks that are interested in potentially affected by the program. So if you have points of contact that are not part of this group, I would love to hear those, either to Stacy or myself, and we can make sure to include them on the distribution there. So I will put a timeline on the survey, just to get that kind of dialed in, knowing that there's ongoing activities I just mentioned that may affect kind of rule changes, rule reviews, and program changes that could result from what's happening this spring. So don't take the 2-week timeline to complete the survey as a deadline for all input. I just want to be able to cut that off and kind of gather that data, and then kind of summarize that and bring that back out to folks for review. So that's what's going on there. So I just mentioned that we'll summarize the feedback. I'll certainly share that out and see if anybody has any additional comments. We're going to be looking to identify any potential rule changes. Again, some of those are going to be technical fixes, ensuring references are all there, language is all still accurate. And then the bigger part where I'll certainly defer to Stacy and her shop and you all is, as a result of kind of critically thinking about where we're at as far as rules go and the program goes, let's create some opportunities to identify potential program changes that would help us down the road, and may or may not require rule changes down the road. One of the objectives of kind of my effort is really to conduct the statutory rule review. So we'll get that taken care of as required. But again, that's more of a, in my mind, kind of a first step at ensuring that we're on the right pathway. It's by no means an end of the process or the critical review of what we're doing, either rule or programmatically. So with that, I guess I would just ping Stacy here and see if you have, or your staff have, any thoughts on kind of the second leg of this effort, or any comments.
I don't have any comments. I would open it up to staff if that are attending, if you have any comments you want to share.
So Ryan, would this be the place where the small woodlands owners group could provide feedback and the types of rule changes they'd like to see?
Absolutely. Yep. No, this is absolutely information seeking from all those folks. So definitely would want a point of contact there if you got information.
Okay. And so this will go not just to the smoke management plan revisions itself, but also to the statutory language. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And to add a note on that too. So normally we don't have statutorily every 5 years, administrative rules have to be reviewed for effectiveness. We've never done that on the smoke management plan because we've been on a 5-year review cycle for that. So we've edited the rules every 5 years. and that resets the cycle on us. So the Secretary of State has an effectiveness review, which is one of the things Ryan mentioned, and the goal is to use the effectiveness review to help pull in some information to feed into the when we do the rule review. So because we delayed that a few years, so we're hitting a couple different things, but this effectiveness review is a new process for smoke management because of the normal cadence that we changed.
Yeah, so Tim, what comes to mind is timing of assessing and reporting on the results from the West Bend pilot. Ideally, would feed into this process. We haven't really defined on when we need all those analyses and reports and the final report provided. Based upon your needs, can you articulate what you hope to be a deadline for that information to feed into this process?
Well, for West Bend, I think that's independent of what Ryan's asking. This kind of a review of, how did when were these adopted? 2019. So how have the last 4 years gone with the new rules? And then West Bend will be additional to that. I wouldn't even envision out that we would start even the internal portions of rule review or program review until well after West Bend's ready to go, just due to the nature of what it'll take to report back out on it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Just trying to, it's been fascinating over the last few months of trying to have multiple processes coalesce and run parallel, and then trying to keep them from intersecting in certain areas until we're ready for that at the end. So I think that first in briefing for program review will be a big conglomeration of information over the last while, and this is one of those pathways of getting information.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Gabriella got her hand up.
Hey there. Yeah, I just wanted to build on that, Tim, and we had a very strong partnership among our three agencies, with DEQ and ODF, and the whole process of significantly loosening the rules. And I'm assuming, just thinking about our planning and workload, that once West Bend is over and there is a lot of work to evaluate that will be in wildfire season, and that the programmatic review part of this and just a timeline would be helpful. I'm thinking not until after the end of wildfire season. Is that a good estimate?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I'd envision we'd have Ryan back for the June, July SMAC meeting, not to put him on the spot, but that's an option too, of a report back out of what the survey has. And it's kind of a perk of having a 2-week respond window or a shortened respond window to find out what we heard and assimilate that for another report out, if the committee would like to hear that at the next meeting.
Yeah, so I was talking separate from the statutory, review that all of us agencies have to go through to do that check-in and meet the statutory obligations. That just focusing on that bigger programmatic review would be a longer term conversation. Awesome, thanks.
All right, I'm not hearing any more questions on this. Thank you, Ryan.
Yep, you're welcome.
Appreciate that. That'll be interesting to hear to follow up on that. All right, now we're on to we're moving pretty ahead of our schedule here, 10:53, and so we're a good 20 minutes ahead, 20, almost 25. So, are there any action items that we want to review, in anything we need to discuss in preparation for the next meeting?
So Rick, I had a couple action items that I just jotted down. More information on additional position I will have at the June meeting. And then a report from Ryan from the survey at the June meeting. Were there other action items from today that anyone jotted down?
Do you want to hear any report outs from any of the landowners and management agencies either on accomplishments. I guess we'll get that from ODF in terms of accomplishments, but what do you want to hear from the landowners, land management agencies? So we could prep, get you the information ahead of time. Do you want to know fall burn expectations for fall burning at that time, or what are you looking for?
Are you asking me or the committee members?
I'll ask you, but anybody really.
Did we, this is Scott Hansen here, Rick, did we, and also Stacy, excuse me, did we hand out an annual report for 2023, or is that still being published now?
Yep, that's still being worked on. We generally get that by the June SMAC meeting.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. And we'll have a financial report at the June meeting. And then we'll also have some new members and probably need to select a chair and a vice chair at that time.
So I'm just thinking out loud for some suggestions for the committee to consider. Might be maybe a charter review would be worthwhile. A presentation of the annual report, as well as the new metrics that the committee adopted last July. So that'd be the first time we can really, we'll have that data as part of the annual report. As Stacy mentioned, the financials. For your question, Rick, that committee and agency reports, it's generally been pretty agency heavy. So that space of having the committee members is just having a space if there's something that anyone would want to present to the group, since this is a public meeting. But there's no expectation that you need to report out on anything specific. It's what a certain, since you represent the Forest Service on the committee, what would the Forest Service like to share that's applicable? Same thing with Kyle and Scott and those respective members. So it's just to make sure we have time for you guys to share your mind on the agenda.
Okay. And the other suggestion I have for June meeting is a report out on how it went over in the West Bend project area. How did that project?
Yeah. Did it go?
Did it go? Did we get the weather windows? Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Anything else?
Would folks be interested in another EPA/DEQ update on the air quality change, perhaps?
The changes to the National Ambient Air Quality Standards and the ACI Title V applicability. Is that what you're asking about, Christina?
Yeah, I was just thinking if there had been any progress on that, that might be something cool to hear on.
Well, if Randall could commit to, or somebody from EPA could commit to being on, I think if there are developments, it'd be definitely absolutely something we'd want to have on the agenda. But he could report out during the space, during the agency report outs. You got a lot of questions today, so I would say yes.
Could you remind me of the date? Or have you figured that date out yet and I missed it?
Yeah, we don't have a date yet. It's generally in that last week of June. So the 26th or 27th, usually a Wednesday or Thursday of the last week of June.
All righty. I've got a note. Thank you.
And that'll be in person in Salem with a virtual option for those that can't make it to Salem.
All right. I'm going to ask that we push it back a week or two into July, if at all possible, Stacy.
Okay.
I'll be on leave then, so I'll make sure I have somebody that can stand in.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't have anything else on the agenda, so we can adjourn.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Hey, have a good day.